Hi, I'm Jack Baruzzini, and you're listening to The Secret of Stargate, where we talk about the hidden meanings and deeper layers found in the Stargate movies, TV series, and more. And joining me today are Jeff Haecker. Hello, Jeff.
Hey, Jack.
And Victor Lambs. Hey, Victor.
Hi, Jack.
Today we are discussing the 9th episode of Season 2 of Stargate Atlantis, Aurora. Try saying that 5 times fast.
No.
Yeah. In this episode, the Atlantis team discovers the Aurora, a derelict Atlantean warship adrift in space. They find the Atlantean crew alive, but their bodies are too degraded for physical revival. Their consciousness exists in a virtual reality simulation, or as McKay says, a virtual environment. Apparently, there's a difference there. Colonel Shepard enters the simulation to gather intelligence about the Wraith weaknesses. The simulation depicts the Atlantean crew still fighting the Wraith, unaware that they are truly just in a computer. A Wraith spy is discovered within the simulation, posing a threat to the mission. Wraith cruisers are detected approaching the Aurora, putting the Atlantis team under a time pressure. Shepard must navigate the complexities of the simulation, dealing with the Wraith spy and gaining the trust of the simulated Atlantean crew, trying to convince the captain that this is actually all a simulation. Shepard is able to successfully obtain the information that he needs about the Wraith hive ships. The Atlantis team manages to extract Shepard and the data from the Aurora before the Aurora crew heroically sacrifices themselves, destroying both the Aurora and the approaching Wraith ships. And that's pretty much what happens in this episode. What are your thoughts on it, Jeff?
Yeah, this one was okay. We were kind of joking about it. It's not the most exciting episode, but it was cool seeing this ancient ship, which we will see a couple more of these in the show. So we'll kind of get to see them in action. But it was kind of cool getting, because I think this was the first, aside from a jumper and aside from the actual city ships, this is kind of the first like other type of ship we see from the ancients, and it is kind of cool. I mean, it's kind of beat up, but it is kind of cool looking, and actually getting to kind of interact with some ancients, because we really have only seen kind of the ascended ones or the couple in the weird flashback episode. Aside from that, we really haven't really seen ancients and interacted with them, so it was kind of cool to do that. And but yeah, not too much happens in this one. So, but the explosion at the end was pretty neat, I would say. So yeah, that's about it.
Yeah. What about you, Victor?
Yeah, I remember being really angry when this episode first aired because we finally get a Atlantean ship and then they just blow it up at the end. And it kind of, they have to keep nerfing the Atlantis expedition. Like every time they find something really cool, it either gets taken away from them like a ZPM, or it doesn't work, or it just like blows up at the end for no good reason. So I was kind of frustrated with this when I first saw it. Now I'm just kind of bored by it a little bit. There's not a lot going on in this episode. The fact that it's in like a virtual environment or virtual reality tends to, undercut a lot of the drama. The reveal of the Wraith being there was kind of cool. And then we get the ticking clock of the 2 Wraith cruisers, which is also kind of ponderous because in Condemned, we saw them take down a Wraith cruiser with like a single drone or bazooka or something. Like, so these Wraith cruisers are not particularly well made, and I think the Daedalus could take care of 2 of them like without blinking, but what are you going to do?
Yeah, I felt like there was a lot of potential setup in this episode, but then nothing really goes anywhere or pays off, and the whole misdirection of the first officer actually being the Wraith in disguise, like I guess that about like her second scene, I was like, she's fishy, she's a Wraith. So
yeah,
at least they don't like draw that out, although at one point Shepard guesses that she's a Wraith and they don't really do any misdirection after that. Like it just seemed like, okay, that's the mystery and it's solved.
Yeah, at that point, McKay pulls the plug on the Wraith's, pod basically, and it's, oh, okay, I guess she is the Wraith, and then there's no need to really convince the crew of the Aurora or anything at that point.
Yeah, it could have been interesting if they had someone like another character in the virtual environment that you could be a Wraith, and they could have done a little bit more of back and forth, like and have it not be the first officer, but have it be someone else like that you wouldn't expect. Or if they had another Wraith or something on there, and within the environment that could have been interesting too. But yeah, they really didn't do much with that. And did they really say why they were in the environment in the first place? Like, did they, or like, did there is it implied that the Wraith kind of reprogrammed it or something on why they were thinking they were still in the fight? I don't know if that was, and maybe I just stopped paying attention because it wasn't the most interesting, but or did I miss anything there? Or did they say anything in the commentary, Victor, if you watched it?
Not about that specifically, because the premise is 10,000 years ago the ship was badly damaged in a fight, and so the crew put themselves into stasis, presumably so that they could make like the long trip home to Atlantis. But it's not clear like what their virtual environment would have been had the Wraith not intervened. Like, would they have just been like running through fields or something for 10,000 years? Or did the Wraith turn it back on when he took control of the ship or of the virtual environment to try and get them? Because the Wraith wants to get the Atlantean crew to reveal their secrets of hyperspace travel so that the Wraith can develop an intergalactic hyperdrive and come to Earth. And so the Wraith has kind of put this MacGuffin in, like this. Oh, there's information somewhere in a communique that will, reveal a weakness in Wraith technology. And so that keeps the crew busy while they're working on their hyperdrives, and the Wraith is just there taking notes on what they're doing.
Yeah, I just didn't know if they ever explained to the Wraith. I mean, I guess that's the implication, is the Wraith kind of reprogrammed it and set this up when he pulled, I guess, the original occupant of that pod out, or there was an empty pod or something, but I couldn't remember if they explained it in the episode, so I guess they did not.
Yeah, because they find her body at one point. It's all desiccated. So he swapped with her. And I feel like they mentioned something about basically this is what their minds have created because they've been in there so long. And so they're just trying to live their normal lives, that kind of thing. But I don't think they ever specify that it was the Wraith who set it up specifically.
Yeah, they don't mention anything on the commentary about that. The commentary was kind of interesting because it was Martin Wood who directed this episode, and then Peter DeLuise who directs a lot of episodes, and so they compared notes on a lot of their different directing styles and choices, and that part was pretty interesting. Hearing Martin Wood talk about how he likes to, do a lot of things in oneers or one long continuous take, just because he just likes to have scenes play out that way. And how that contrasts with Peter DeLuise, which is basically setting up the camera and then letting the actors do their lines and then him saying, okay, do that last part again while the camera is still rolling, basically, and just keeping the camera rolling while the actor does multiple takes and then, fixing it and editing with a lot of different cuts and stuff. So the cool scene at the end where, the camera goes into Weir's briefing room and they're all standing around talking, and then Shepard uncorks a bottle of not champagne, but Cristal, and pours it into the glasses, and they all have a toast to the crew of the Aurora. That's a pretty good, one take shot that's representative of Martin Wood's directing style.
Mm-hmm. I did like that scene at the end of just honoring that crew, we didn't really get to know them that well, so there wasn't as much emotion there, but
they weren't that interesting though, so I don't know that there would be that much.
They could have. I wish we could have spent more time with the actual crew of the Aurora, getting to know them, because all we really know about them is the captain, and he's bent on his task, but he has his doubts, and Shepard is playing into those doubts to try to convince him that they're actually in a simulation. And then we have the creepy first officer who is just goading him on the whole time. And then there's the guard who's just a guard. They don't really have any sort of characterization. We don't ever get a scene where he talks about oh, I want to go home and see my family who's on Atlantis, and that could be sad because they've obviously been dead for thousands of years. You don't really get any sort of depth to them.
No, I mean, they almost come across as just NPCs in a virtual environment, and we forget kind of that they are real people because we don't tie it back to the people in the pods, except for the first officer who we see, mummified and dead on the floor of the ship. And the captain himself, played by Bruce Dawson, I guess he was hired because he has, blue eyes and, could be calm and understanding and stuff, but just comes across as really just kind of milquetoast and boring. And That's pretty consistent with the Ancients and the Lanteans that we've seen so far, is that they, and the Tolans too, have the same thing where we're like, oh, we're so advanced, we're just going to be really kind of monotonous and emotionless and really dry, and it doesn't make for good characters, in my opinion. They're not funny.
Their whole ship is like muted, boring beige colors, and so are their personalities.
Yeah, they did a good job with the lighting and the coloring where, when you see the ship, it is they use the same sets for the, real ship with the pods. And then when they go into the virtual environment, it's the same sets, just the pods have been removed and it's lit in this like stark blue light, like white lighting. And so I thought that was done very effectively.
Mm-hmm.
And the bridge set was pretty cool. It was a really good bridge set.
And was that a redress of like the Atlantis set? Because I felt like there were a lot of very familiar components. I don't know if it was a specific set they had, or if it was just a rearranged other things.
Built most of it. It's still in the Blade Studios, so on that same lot, but I think it was a new set that they built. They used it also in Trinity for the ancient lab of that super weapon or super power source that McKay blew up. So, and they'll use it again when we next see a Lantean ship as well. So I think they amortized it over several episodes.
Yeah. And we have Caldwell is still kind of unnecessarily antagonistic, but I feel like Weir is at the, kind of the same way to him. Like, honestly, their dynamic is starting to grate on me because from his point of view, like, he's just doing what he's supposed to be doing and taking care of his crew, and she's treating him like he's an enemy.
Yeah, he has a really good point. He's like, Weir's like, we need you to go on a mission, and he's like, this is my ship. And she's like, and he's like, don't worry, I want to go too. And anyways, but I want my crew to come along and lead the mission because the only way they're going to get good is by going on missions and learning about Lantean technology. And Weir goes, no, I want the same 4 people that go on every mission to go on this mission, which isn't really good skill building or employee development really on her part.
No, you work yourself into a hole if you have the same 4 people doing everything.
Yeah, and why isn't like Zelenka coming along?
Yeah. You just need McKay. Everyone else is kind of, Shepard's there because he's the leader, and then Ronan and Taylor just don't have much to do in this one other than try to distract Caldwell.
Yeah, pretty much. Ronan has no purpose being there. He doesn't shoot the Wraith or anything. He just kind of wanders from scene to scene.
Yeah, and I think that was another problem with this episode, is it felt like there was no danger. Like most of the action takes place within the virtual world, and they talk about how he can't actually be harmed by the Wraith, and we don't really see any sort of, like, I was expecting them to kind of do like the Matrix kind of thing where the Wraith would start killing people in the virtual world and their bodies would be dying in their pods, but we don't really get any of that.
Yeah, they'd go like, no, not like this.
Exactly.
And then they pop out of the Matrix.
Yeah.
And another thing I don't like about this episode is we get the kind of cringe scene at the beginning. The 2 people playing chess, we don't recognize them because they're actually in real life chess champions that they brought in as extras to just stare at each other. And, they had the chessboard set up for them, but the extras said, no, this isn't a very good move. And so they set up their own, like, very challenging chess game. And that's what's displayed there. But then Ronan's like, this is boring. I'm leaving. And we're just like, oh, and it's like this weird, like, Three's Company level humor. It's like, oh, you're leaving? Well, I know Shepard thinks you're a valuable member of the team, but if you want to leave the city, and Ronan's like, no, I'm just leaving the lunchroom. And it's like, womp, womp, it was just kind of dumb, in my opinion.
I think Weir's weaknesses as a leader are starting to show through.
Yeah, she's not the last couple of episodes, she really hasn't shown a very good diplomatic side that she's supposedly, known for.
Yeah, I think that's the problem. And I don't like the way she's treating Caldwell, because most of his points have been completely reasonable.
Yeah. Yeah, and we do get various ticking clocks, and Caldwell's like, well, we need to pull you out because the Wraith cruisers are here. We need to blow up the ship before they get the data. And it starts off like they'll be here in 30 minutes, and then they'll be here in 5 minutes, and then I swear like 10 minutes of episode happens. You know, it's one of those things where the urgency just isn't there.
And there's no like final battle really. Like the Wraith get there, they fire a couple shots, and then they blow the ship up. But you never feel any sort of tension.
No,
I did like the scene where the Wraith wakes up and McKay, he's running away and shooting it, and he hits it a bunch and he keeps running away. I mean, that was maybe the best scene of the episode, aside from the explosion. But
yeah,
and you think
Hewitt did that so well.
Yeah, because you think at first that maybe it's dead, and I couldn't remember if there were multiple Wraiths, so I was kind of expecting, is there going to be another one that's like teamed up with the first one or something? But it's just that one that was able to survive that shot. And I mean, McKay should have just like, once he kind of knocks it out, the shots just like go back and put another clip in and keep shooting it till it's actually dead. But I guess then the episode would have ended. So.
And in real life, they did so we get that kind of not really even jump scare because the Wraith is in his pod and he wakes up. But what they did to the actors is the first, the captain we kind of see in a pod, and he looks like a very old man. And what they had done during rehearsal is all the people in the pods are just, sculpted heads in the pods.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what they had rehearsed as, but then when they were shooting, they put an actual guy in the pod, but they didn't tell the other actors in the scene. And so they started shooting the scene, and suddenly the guy in the pod goes, ah, like that. And Taylor and everybody just like jump back because they expected it to just be a mannequin in the pod.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. The outtakes for this episode, if they exist, would I think be more interesting than the episode itself.
Yeah. And I feel like this would be a situation where you would want Weir to go along, and she should be the one going into the virtual environment to negotiate with the captain, because that's kind of what her specialty is.
Yeah, but then we just get lots of scenes of Weir in the jail cell. They really like that jail cell set. I mean, we spend most of the time on the ship, in the jail cell, which is another problem. Granted, they only have the jail cell, the hallway, and then the bridge, but it would have been nice to see more of the ship.
Yeah, they probably wouldn't send Weir either, because she's, this is untested technology, so they wouldn't send they're going to send the military guy in to, be the guy who goes down if something happens. So that's why he goes. I think that's why they wouldn't have. But yeah, and she would have also just been like, Atlantis. We're from Atlantis, and just it would have been even slower. So than Shepard's negotiation.
Yeah, and that's another thing that you touched on there, is that technology is untested, and so there's danger if they try to pull them out manually. The conceit is that anybody in the virtual environment can wake up at any time just by, thinking themselves awake, and nobody on the crew tries to do that. We could have had like a scene where someone's like, oh, really? Let me try it. And then they wake up and they're like, I'm dead because I'm very old.
Yeah, and I think that's really the weakness, is that I never felt like any of the characters were actually in danger.
Yeah. Another interesting behind the scenes moment is when they first go over and they're wearing those spacesuits. Mm-hmm. Those are actually sealed helmets, and they don't have air packs like, an actual astronaut would. So you'll notice that there's lines running down their legs, and that they run out to another room, and there's actually air in the other room being pumped into their helmets, because the actors wouldn't be able to breathe without that air. But they can't have those lines running down their legs in the scenes where you see their legs and they're walking around. So what they did for those is they just temporarily disconnected their air supply while they walked around a little bit, and then like plugged it back in real quick before they suffocated.
Interesting.
And apparently Jason Momoa's head was, because those suits have like that steel collar that your head has to go through to put the helmet on. His head was too big to go through that collar. So in all the scenes in the spacesuit, it's not Jason Momoa, it's his body double, which is why we never see his face in the helmet in any of those scenes. It's not actually him in any of the scenes in the spacesuit. It's the body double.
Interesting. I mean, he's a pretty big guy, so.
Yeah.
I also didn't realize he was only 25 in this season.
Yeah. He doesn't seem to age
No.
very much.
Yeah. He looks pretty much
Yeah.
the same now.
He has those long telomeres, or whatever. Must do a lot of like cold plunges and stuff.
That, or he's a replicant, or whatever the equivalent is in the Dune universe.
Oh yeah,
Golem.
A Gola.
Yeah, a Gola. That's it.
He just has one of these ancient stasis pods with a virtual environment attached to it.
Exactly. It's Jason Momoa's virtual environment. We're all just living in it.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, another possible dramatic, interesting thing that they diffuse right away is when they go over and they're like, "Wow, there's like 600 crew members here. Can we bring them out and save them?" And then like right away they're like, "No, we can't bring them out. They die instantly." So, we never have to deal with the moral ramifications or anything about blowing up the ship or potentially anything like that. Because I mean, in some respect, like blowing up the ship before the Wraith gets there, you'd be killing hundreds of people. But they kind of wave that away and say no, their bodies are functionally already dead, and it's just their minds that are alive. Which I don't know if that's better or worse, but
yeah, at that point it's like you're either, I guess that would go into the whole like theory of the mind, and if their mind is still alive but their body is dead, is it just like a recording that's playing? Like they don't really dig too deep into that concept, which I feel like you could explore. And other science fiction, I feel like even Stargate has explored this in other ways, but
it would be cool if they were just like mental echoes or something.
Yeah,
that would have been pretty interesting too, and would have explained more about how they're not willing to accept anything that Shepard is saying at first. And of course, the only person who's listening to him when he says, "No, we're from Atlantis. The Wraith tried to blow up our city, but we tricked them. We're hoping they never find out that we tricked them." And of course, Shepard is saying all of this to a Wraith. First officer played by Pascal Hutton, who's gone on to do lots of shows. I guess there's that show that Lisa talks about, Wind Calls the Heart, which is like a Hallmark show that Major Lauren Kevon Smith is on. I guess she's on that show as well.
Nice. Yeah, it's they could have had a bit more debate with her and the captain and Shepard, other than just like, "Yep, she's a Wraith. You can see it now."
Yeah. Although that scene where she kind of, McKay's monkeying around with the Wraith technology that the Wraith have plugged into the pod, and so her Wraith features are coming, or his Wraith features are coming through because it's a guy Wraith. Where the face transforms. That's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
That was a good effect.
I guess McKay didn't find her hot at that point.
Nope. You found me beautiful once. Yeah, and so another convenient thing, Shepard comes out of the, McKay has turned his back on the hallway where the Wraith is chasing him, so maybe he does wake Shepard up at that point, right? Or does Shepard wake himself up? And Shepard, maybe at that point McKay does wake Shepard up, and Shepard, already has his hand on his gun and is just like blam, 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 to the Wraith.
Yeah, pretty much. It is also interesting to see how much the Ancients and the Atlanteans have been demystified as Atlantis has gone on. Like when we first encounter them in SG-1, they're very, like, they're the ascended ethereal beings who you can't really comprehend. But the more we see of them, the more they're just regular people.
Yeah, just not very funny.
These are more like the Tolans, like they're just the super advanced humans that have this advanced technology. They're not, maybe they're studying ascension at that point, but they're not, they don't have any like real, like nobody's ascended yet, or maybe very few people have ascended. So
yeah,
still they're closer to human, to modern day humans than they are to the ascended ancients.
Yeah, that is true.
It could have been interesting if they had said, like, if they had gotten everybody to ascend or something, like
that would have been cool. Yeah.
Blowing up, like, your people learned how to ascend, and like, oh, cool idea, let's do that, or something, something like that. But
have them ascend out of the virtual world rather than just them all blowing up.
Yeah, but instead the captain somehow activates the self-destruct on the ship from inside the virtual world. And he has a moment with his crew where he's like, I know our comrades would be proud of us on this day. And then they blow up the two small Wraith cruisers.
I mean, if he can activate the self-destruct, can he not activate the hyperdrive and get out of there?
The ship looked, I mean, it was pretty beat up, so maybe it was too far damaged to
Perhaps.
do need that.
Just grasping at straws, I guess.
Yeah, I know.
Or the Daedalus could have towed it or something. Like, could they not have tried to tow it, through hyperspace or tractor? I think the Daedalus has tractor beams, but I don't know.
Yeah, and we have seen ships towed through hyperspace before, I believe. So yeah, so frustrating. We see this cool ship, they blow it up right away. We meet the, Lantians, they blow them up right away. And there's just a lot of missed opportunities in this one.
Yeah, exactly. Well, did we have any fun alternate language titles for this episode?
In most cases, it was just Aurora in English or whatever. But in Japanese, we get Nemurero Aurora, which is the sleeping Aurora. Which is good.
They should have called it Sleeping Beauty in Japanese.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, because her name is Aurora, so.
Yeah.
Oh, it is, yeah. I totally didn't make that connection.
Nice. I wonder if that was an intentional reference or not.
Yeah, I guess they didn't call that out in the commentary, but, it could have been.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, we do have some feedback on our 200th episode talking about our favorite Kawooshes. On YouTube, HemNOT says, "Congrats on the 200 and thanks for all the company you've kept me on my walks and lawn work. Anyway, I'm glad people mentioned the episode Upgrades because it is one of my all-time favorites too. So is Paradise Lost because obviously all Mayborn episodes are good simply by default."
I agree.
Yeah. No, they're always fun. And we appreciate everyone sticking with us for 200 episodes. And it's nice to be the podcast that people listen to while they're cutting their grass, because I know I do that with a lot of ones.
Yeah, it is always nice to hear what people do while they listen to the podcast.
Yeah, that means they're listening, so that's good.
Yeah, I don't imagine everybody sitting down in their like easy chair with a snifter of brandy and a fine cigar as they're like just listening to our podcast on a expensive hi-fi system or something. Although that would be nice too.
Maybe we could start releasing it on like vinyl for those.
Yeah, yeah, we could.
We'll talk to Dom about that. I'm sure he'd be down for that.
Yeah, I mean, how much does a vinyl like cutter and presser really cost?
Yeah. And Mark Gillies 1970 on YouTube also says, "Congrats on the 200. Shouldn't this have been a flashback episode? One of you has memories of past episodes. Remember the time we were all kids?" I think we actually talked about that.
Yeah, we have discussed doing that for one of the clip shows, but
yeah,
maybe if there's a clip show coming up, we'll do that. But yeah, that was episode 133, Fragile Balance, where we were temporarily replaced with child versions of ourselves. So if you want to see that, go back and watch. I think it was episode 133.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about that is that so it was our kids. We put our kids in place for us and then just said, like, just do the podcast, and they did 20 minutes of the podcast. And eventually we're like, wait, we got to do the podcast now. Yeah. And so we got the kids out and only a few minutes of it made it into the actual episode, but that was a lot of fun.
We should see about putting that out for the patrons.
Yeah.
That would be fun. Yeah. No, I remember that we were just sitting there and like, they could just run the whole thing.
Exactly. There's no special skills involved in doing what we do.
Nope. Just like to talk.
Yep.
And on Discord, which you should definitely come over and join us at sqpn.com/Discord. We got the Secret to Stargate channel over there. Matthew says, "Unpopular opinion. Unending is a top 5 standalone episode."
What was that?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember that one.
You haven't seen it yet, Jack, unless you've seen that. That's the finale of SG1.
Oh, okay.
No, I haven't.
Yeah, it's the very last episode before, and then you have the movies, but yeah, it's the very last SG1.
Okay.
And I do like that one too. So,
Well, I will reserve any judgment on it until I've seen it then.
Yeah, it should be coming up in about another year and a half.
Nice.
Or maybe closer to a year. I don't know.
He also says, the only other top 5 of mine that wasn't mentioned is Thor's hammer. Excellent early lore building, especially.
Yep.
And for the first SG1 episode I saw. That was a good one. That's the one
with the James Earl Jones.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's a good one.
Yeah.
I said Thor's chariot, but yeah, Thor's hammer is a good one too. Thor's chariot's the sequel to that one. So
I need to start going back and rewatching early SG1.
Yeah, Thor's hammer I think was written by Catherine Powers, who did our favorite Emancipation episode as well. So
no one else mentioned. Totally blanking on the episode now. The one with the zipper people.
Oh, One False Step.
One False Step.
Step. Yeah, I put that on my list because it's so memorable. We still reference it regularly. Awesome. We really appreciate all the support we've gotten from everyone. We really enjoy doing this, and we love hearing y'all's opinions on your top 5 episodes. And I think Jeff actually on the Discord, he posted a big list of questions. So if anyone's interested in checking those out and letting us know your opinions, you can do that at sqpn.com/discord. And before we go, we'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create The Secret to Stargate, including Mike P., Jason O., Kate Z., Matthew B., and Sailing L. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue The Secret to Stargate and all the shows at StarQuest. And you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. And be sure to follow the show on Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and you can find our video versions at youtube.com/StarQuestMedia. And to find previous episodes of Secret to Stargate and to send feedback, please visit sqpn.com/Stargate. And you can email us at stargate@sqpn.com and follow StarQuest on social media at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia or on X at SQPN. And as I previously mentioned, we got our Discord at sqpn.com/Discord. And we'll be back next time with the next episode of SG1, The Fourth Horseman, Parts 1 and 2. Until then, Jeff Haecker, thank you for joining me and sharing The Secret to Stargate.
Thanks, Jack.
And Victor Lambs, thank you as well.
Thanks, Jack. And remember, it says right here, why is the smart one having to stop and answer so many questions?
I wonder that a lot. At least I wish I wondered that a lot. And once again, I'm Jack Baruzzini. Thank you for listening to The Secret to Stargate on StarQuest.
Anyway, I'm sorry, but that just happens to be how I feel about it. What do you think?